Hey guys, Level Cap here. Today I want to talk about luck versus skill and strategy when it comes to the game PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds. This is an interesting topic. I've noticed a lot of people recently have been complaining that the game is too much reliant on luck, and even though people would like to argue that it's about skill and strategy, luck plays actually a much bigger factor in determining who wins the game. Now there's plenty of games and even real life sports that factor in a huge amount of luck to them, yet they still succeed as competitive, engaging activities like American football or Texas Hold'em poker. Both of these are very competitive. People like to watch them, but there's still a huge luck factor, and that can make it more exciting. And I think it has a big aspect of PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds is that you never really know quite what's going to happen. If you could predict every single game, or you could use the same strategies and thinking to win every single match, it would probably get a little bit stale. And the fact that there's always some sort of random element that could come or something to sort of trip you up along the way makes it more interesting and more fun to play. Now, of course, in Battlegrounds, just like poker, the players who employ the best strategic options and they look at the stats and what works the best most consistently most of the time will increase their chances of winning. They won't give themselves great odds of winning in Battlegrounds. In fact, some of the best teams in the world are only getting a 40 to 43% win ratio, and that's matching into random servers where they have their 4-player squads together, and they're not necessarily going up against the other best players in the world. In fact, I would wager most of the time they're not matchmaking against other players of equal, say, skill or strategy. But the luck factor, the random factor in this game is so severe that even a 4-player squad of some of the best players are going to lose a lot of the time just because of being on the wrong side of the circle, or not getting the best loot in the start of the game, or getting sandwiched between two squads. There's so many different things that can crop up that can steal away a victory. Now, squad play still has the best potential of representing true skill, or a true skill pool and strategy pool in terms of victory and loss. 4 players can be incredibly good, work well together. Even if one of them dies or 2 of them dies, they still have a chance of making it to the end game and getting a victory. However, when you bump down to, say, solo play, the best players in the world only have a 9%, maybe 10% win-loss ratio. So saying that the best players, the most strategic players, the most skillful players are only winning 1 out of 10 games on average definitely doesn't represent skill or strategy. So I can say with complete objectivity that luck plays a big factor in this game, and not just a big factor, a huge factor. If the best players are only winning 10% of their games, or the best squads aren't even making a 50% win-loss ratio, then luck is a bigger factor than skill and strategy. Which is interesting because there was an interview with PlayerUnkown. 2 angry gamers met him and they did an interview, and in the beginning of their interview he says, "For me, Battle Royale, I started it to find the best player. No matter what you have, you should be able to win." And this is a cool sentiment. I like the idea of it. The best players should be rewarded. They often are in other sports or games, but in the current state, or the current design stage, it definitely doesn't represent the best of the best. Maybe over time, if among like 50 games or 100 games, you can sort of determine who is the best player based on their win-loss ratio. But in a single match, absolutely no way to determine the best player from whoever wins that solo game. If they were ever to do legitimate tournaments of PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds, it would have to be like a week-long event. You know, in baseball, how they have 7 games to determine the winner, they would need at least 7 games to try and get close to determining one of the best players in PlayerUnkown Battleground, because you just have to factor in for that random chance equation. I mean, there's just so many instances where you can land on a loot place, somebody else lands on the loot place, and they get to a gun just a second before you, turn around and blow your head off. Now, you could argue that, oh, hey, they were more skillful, they beat you to it, but there's so much luck when you're actually dropping down with a parachute as to where the loot is going to be placed exactly that you can't predict it perfectly. So that luck factor and just the pure looting mechanics at the beginning of the game allow a random player to potentially win a firefight. Now, the better players can maximize their chances of winning early game, but it still doesn't mean that the best players are going to always win early game. I see them lose all the time watching some of the better streamers out there. They'll spawn in, they'll go down for a weapon, and they'll die immediately to somebody who picked up a shotgun before they can get it. Now, of course, there are ways to try and combat the random factor, especially in early game. Having more consistent loot tables. If there are buildings that you knew if you went into certain buildings or certain offices or rooms or whatever, that you would pretty much be guaranteed a weapon, you could better strategize your dropping strategies, how to parachute in, where to parachute into, what buildings to go for. And this way, if more players got guns more consistently early game, you would be having firefights rather than people chasing around unarmed players. And that would sort of give everybody a little bit of a fighting chance early game and help balance that out. Of course, it's never going to get around the fact that bailing into a city that's totally uncontested has a huge advantage over somebody bailing into a city that has eight other players there. Predicting the actions of 99 other players in a solo game is pretty much impossible. Sometimes you drop into an incredibly good loot spot that favors you and allows you to leave that zone and move on with great gear set up for the mid game or even end game. But sometimes you drop into a zone where the loot is scarce, or there's so many people competing for the loot that it doesn't make sense to try and engage tactically and fight for the loot right in the early game, especially when the circles push you so hard. So there's many random chance scenarios that really do affect your strategy early game, and that's probably one of the most important times in the game in terms of establishing yourself and how much gear you have and where you want to move to next. And so there's a lot of things that could be done to try and eliminate some of the random chance scenarios in this game. The question is, do people really want that to happen? The game itself has been so incredibly successful, already making it to like the top 3 Steam games right now. I mean, right below like Counter-Strike and Dota 2. It's insane to see like PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds up there with those games. But it shows that people have really flocked to this game design. Now, certainly survival games have an appeal to them. Realistic combat games where you have weapons with realistic bullet physics and stuff like that appeal to a lot of people. But for me, I think it's that joining into a game, I have a different adventure, a different experience pretty much every single time. Rarely do I get games that feel like they're just repeats of the game before them. The adventure almost always seems different. There's different strategic options around. I think I have like the best strategy for winning, but then I end up too far away from the circle or something else happens and I have to modify that strategy drastically to try and make it to the end game. And that for me has always been fun. It's always been about playing the odds and trying to do the best thing possible to make it to the end game. I very much think it has that similar appeal to like Texas Hold'em poker, where you never know you can win for certain, but if you maximize your odds, you look at the cards on the table, you figure out what gives you the best chance of winning, then that's where the excitement comes from. So there's a strategy and RNG factor, and a lot of people gravitate towards those style of games. The question is, do we want to eliminate more and more of that RNG factor, or do we want to keep it where it is? This game often makes me think about American football, and especially an episode of Adam Ruins Everything. I don't know if you guys have seen that show, where he breaks down how the statistics behind American football do not represent the Super Bowl or the best team in any way whatsoever, and that more often than not, the team without the best stats ends up winning the Super Bowl. So it's just kind of funny that one of the most popular sports in America, one of the most enjoyable sports, I really like watching it, it's something that anything can really happen in the Super Bowl. And I think people are attracted to that idea that the final game of the season or the last game of the tournament, if you will, if you're playing PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds, anybody could really win. Sure, you might have the favored people or the statistically best or the most skillful people, but at the end of the day, they're not guaranteed to win, or they're not most likely going to win, and that just so much stuff can happen. The question at the end of the day is just how much luck or RNG do we want in this game by the final product? I've been playing Hearthstone since launch, but I've been playing it on a very casual level. And I was very surprised when some of the top tournament players quit the game entirely because they broke down the fact that they just couldn't win beyond a certain percentage rate, no matter how good they were at the game, because of the RNG factor. And so that was a really interesting wake-up call for the competitive side of the game, and we could see something like that long-term with PlayerUnkown's Battlegrounds if there is too much RNG in there. Once you start getting serious about the game and want to play it much more competitively, the RNG factor becomes frustrating. I'd be very interested to hear PlayerUnkown's response to this idea, or how much RNG he wants in the game, as it did seem to indicate in his interview that he thought the game should be about finding the best player. It's clearly not about finding the best player, at least not in a single game of Battlegrounds. Even over the course of 10 games, you're probably not going to find the best player or the best squad. So again, I'd be very interesting to know if he's going to try and increase the RNG factor or decrease the RNG factor for this game in the long term. Anyway, that kind of wraps it up for this video. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about the RNG factor, especially when it comes to competitive gaming. And as always, I'll see you next time. This is Level Cap, signing off.